Hello, and welcome to Shaking and Sipping. This is the show where we shake up a cocktail or other mixed drink, have a sip, see how it is, and then talk about some variants and the history of it. We're continuing our quest to work through the IBA's official list of cocktails to see how those stack up. We're in the second section, the contemporary classics, and this week's classic is the Grasshopper. Now, unlike a couple of the drinks we've had here in the contemporary classics, I think the Grasshopper absolutely is a classic. Not my favorite drink, perhaps, but certainly a drink that everyone has heard of and knows exists, and probably is still ordered by someone. So I'm glad it's here for that reason. The history of the drink's a bit interesting. We've got a fairly established story that is in nearly every write-up you'll find of the drink, and it might be true, kind of. So let's relay that story first that might be true, kind of. So there was a gentleman by the name of Philippe Guichet, whose name may actually have been Philibert or Philibert, and he bought a restaurant in New Orleans. It's currently called Two Jacks. That's what he called it when he owned it as well. It had a different name originally, but it's like the second oldest restaurant in New Orleans. It goes back to the 1840s or something. And at this restaurant, in addition to running it, he did some mixology and some bartending. And the story goes that he went to a cocktail competition in New York City in either 1918 or 1919 and created a drink called the Grasshopper. He won second place, not first, and he didn't come up with the name, but someone there did because the green color reminded them of a grasshopper or something. There's a second slight variant on the story that either he or perhaps his son, whose name was Philip Jr., went to a cocktail competition during Prohibition in like 1928. Also somewhere northeast New York maybe, and created the drink. Same story there. Either way, in both stories, he's supposed to have gotten second place. In some of the stories, there's even names attached as to who was judging the competition, some famous newspapermen and such. We don't know anything about the name of the competition, what won first place, anything else. I'm skeptical about this story for a couple reasons. One, because we don't have those details. We don't know who won. We don't know anything else about this competition. I'm not sure. What is clear, though, is that he did popularize this drink, at least as we know it today, as a cream-based drink. This was first evidenced in New Orleans in or about 1919, according to some newspaper articles and things. So it seems like he definitely either modified the drink or brought the drink to the city and made it popular. The reason why I don't believe the overall story, that he just completely created the drink or that someone just came up with the name Grasshopper because it's green, is because there's a drink called a Grasshopper in 1908. That's the same drink minus the cream. So we know this from William Boothby, aka Cocktail Bill's book from 1908 called like The World's Drinks and How to Mix Them or something like that. I'm sure I've mentioned that book before. He cites this drink called the Grasshopper in equal parts Crème de Menthe and Crème de Cacao to a bartender in San Francisco called Harry O'Brien. And this makes sense because Cocktail Bill was himself a bartender in San Francisco, starting in, I think, 1904, give or take. So he would have been around that big San Francisco bartending scene, and he cites this drink more than a decade before anyone claims that Philippe Guichet could possibly have made it. So maybe he's the one who added cream to it, but the drink certainly was around beforehand. There's also, of course, and I think I mentioned this in our very first, very poorly shot episode on this channel, the Alexander. IBA lists Grasshopper as an Alexander variant. It kind of is, especially a version that we'll be making today. But it's not historically so. There's no historical connection between an Alexander and a Grasshopper whatsoever, so I'm not entirely sure why IBA lists it as a variant. The final story that some folks have is that the drink didn't exist until the 50s, and it was invented in Wisconsin. That's just not true. So there is something called the Milwaukee Supper Club or the Wisconsin Supper Club or something like this, who famously makes a version of this drink using an ice cream base and to like a Grasshopper milkshake, basically. It does seem like they probably invented that idea, and that probably was in the 50s. But this drink was around for decades before then, and the non-cream version was around for at least a decade before that. But much like last week, when that was a common option on the Golden Dream, was to blend it with ice cream, that is also an option here, though we're not going to do that today. So what we're going to do is just make 3 simple versions of it. We're going to make something similar to the original creamless version. Then we're going to make the IBA spec. And then we're going to make one tweak to that to bring it in line with both the idea that maybe it's an Alexander riff and it's the way that Two Jacks makes it today. So let's get right to it. All right, so for the first drink, we're just going to make that original version, kind of, the Harry O'Brien from 1908 or before. The original drink is just the 2 spirits layered in a glass. There's nothing that excites me less than a glass with just 2 spirits layered in it. So we're going to go ahead and stir it. Apologies for breaking that tradition there. But we're just going to add our 2 ingredients and give it a stir. So the first one is green crème de menthe. Now, most reputable manufacturers of crème de menthe don't make green crème de menthe. So this is Vita Divine. I have no idea what that is. I bought this especially for this video because otherwise I wouldn't stock green crème de menthe. So I don't know if it's any good is the moral of the story. We want 30 milliliters or 1 ounce. And again, it's equal parts, so use whatever amount you want for your glass and your taste. And 30 milliliters or 1 ounce of our white creme de cacao. Here we definitely do want to use white because using brown creme de cacao with the green would just look so muddy and gross. Let's go ahead and give this a stir. And we're just going to go ahead and strain that into an ideally chilled Nicanora glass. No garnish needed. This is a Grasshopper. Nose is all menthol. Yeah, just menthol. Not even all of the mint flavors, just menthol. That's so sweet. So obviously just mixing 2 crèmes together. A crème, of course, being a type of liqueur that has a certain percentage of sugar in it, which is more so than if it's just a liqueur. So 2 things that are crèmes are just a hell of a lot of sugar, intensely minty. Yeah, there's not much to say. It's mint, 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 sweet mint, and then there's just a hair of cacao, chocolate, right toward the very back of the palate that I get for a minute before that goes away, and then suddenly I've got that big menthol energy again. It's not bad, it's just very sweet and mint. It's fine. Alright, for our second version, it's going to be very simple. This is also an equal parts drink traditionally. This is the IBA spec Grasshopper, which is very similar to the one that they originally served at Two Jacks, that they've served many, many places. Some folks like to lengthen this by making a larger amount of cream in the drink. I don't know that I think that's a great idea. The idea behind it makes sense, which is this is already a low alcohol drink, right? We're using 2 non-base spirits. This one's 30 proof and this one's 50 proof. So nowhere near the alcohol content of a base spirit. And so lengthening it even more with the cream, we're even diluting that further. So if we're treating this drink not just as an after dinner drink, but literally as the dessert of the meal, we don't necessarily want an alcohol bomb, especially if folks are going to be leaving this meal to drive home or whatever they're going to get up to. I get that idea. I'm just not sure that I want a drink with 2 or 3 ounces of heavy cream in it. So we're not going to do that. We're going to stick with equal parts. IBA calls these parts at 20 milliliters, so 2/3 of an ounce. Fine. Let's go ahead and do 20 milliliter pours of this OK Crème de Menthe, our white Crème de Cacao, and of our cream. Now, opinions vary here as to whether this should be like double cream, single cream, half and half, depending on where you are, light whipping cream. Use whatever you want for your desired level of sort of thick creaminess, amount of butteriness to it. This is double cream or heavy whipping cream, but whatever you want to use will work fine. I'm going to grab some ice. We'll give it a shake. IBA again on this one says to shake briskly for a few seconds, much like last week's, which seems like a weird instruction because, again, cream-based drinks we generally want to shake quite vigorously to sort of thicken and really incorporate. So I'm just going to do a very standard shake. I'm not going to do what I would normally think to do with a cream drink, which is to overshake it or to dry shake it, etc. But I'm also not going to quite listen to the IBA and make sure to shake it for only a few seconds. Anyway, let's give it a shake. And then we're just going to go ahead and strain that into another ideally chilled Nick and Nora glass. Very thick, very green, very grasshoppery. For garnish, IBA says optionally a mint leaf, and in their photo they've got one mint leaf. I don't like that. That seems silly to me. So I'm just going to continue breaking rules on this episode. I've always preferred this drink with a little bit of dark chocolate shaved onto it. I really like a sprig of fresh mint in a drink if it's like a nice big quantity of mint, but I think having a single leaf on this already green glass just isn't doing anything for us visually or from a flavor standpoint. So let's give a try to the IBA spec Grasshopper. So I'm getting a lot of that shaved chocolate, obviously, on the nose. The mint is much more muted because of that cream, which I think is probably a good thing. Yeah, there's still a lot of it in the drink. That's still the dominant element. It's certainly better, though. You get that sort of butter fat in the cream that the mint is integrated into, so it's sort of this sweet, creamy, little bit of a melted ice cream sort of vibe going on. The chocolate, especially what I've shaved on there, is adding a little bit to it. So again, kind of in that melted ice cream vibe, sort of a mint chocolate chip sort of deal. I think it's very tasty. But it's not really a drink, it's just a melted ice cream in a glass. Final thing we want to look at today is, as mentioned earlier, the drink is sometimes considered to be a variant on an Alexander, although it's not historically so. And that is kind of similar, right? With an Alexander, we do have creme de cacao, or in some versions, creme de menthe, and we do have cream, so similar. But we don't have cognac. And so an Alexander, of course, is a much stronger drink. It's got a real base spirit. Cognac or occasionally brandy, which is why the drink's sometimes called a brandy Alexander. So if we want to get this closer to an Alexander, we'd want to add our cognac back. Also, the way that Two Jacks has been making it for a couple decades now is to add a brandy float to the drink. So I don't really know about a float. I don't see how that's helping us here. I want it integrated. So we're going to stay with equal parts theory here, and I'm just going to give this a really quick reshake with a little bit less than 20 milliliters since I already drank some of the drink, obviously. So I'm going to put in about 15 milliliters, that's half an ounce, of our Pierre Ferrand 1840 cognac. So that's an immediately better drink. That is no longer just a mint bomb going off. There's actually more chocolate now. The mint is integrated. There's a hint of it at the beginning, and then there's a nice long tail of big open menthol. But the middle of the drink now is an integrated thing. I've got the cognac sort of underlying sort of fruitiness to it, in with a lot of those chocolate notes, with just a little bit of the mint peeking out. That actually tastes nice. Does it evolve? Does it challenge me? Is it a really drink I've got to struggle with? No, it's still very simple, very sweet. Sort of hits 2 steps in evolution and that's it. But it's an actual drink now. It tastes good. It tastes of something other than just mint. But we have added now cognac, which is 90 proof in this case. So this is now sort of a real drink. If you're having a large one of these as a dessert or a couple of these, you are going to feel a little bit of something. Well, thanks as always for coming along on our journey where we look at a drink. This was the Grasshopper. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to make one this week, I guess you can. I'm not going to really try to convince you to. If you're in the mood for it, though, it's not bad. Do all the YouTube type stuff, like, share, subscribe, watch our other videos, comment, tell your friends. I'd appreciate it. Visit the blog at shakingandssipping.com. We'll have a write-up on this and each other drink, as well as many weeks the day after the video post. We'll have IBA in real life, where we go to a local Seattle cocktail bar, see how they make the drink, if they have a spin on it, if they make it often, etc. I don't know for sure if we're doing one this week, but the way you will know when it posts, if you follow on Twitter at shaking_sipping. I always post there when there's a new IBA in real life going up. That's all I've got for you this week on a pretty straightforward episode, but we'll be back next week with the next drink on the IBA's list. Until then, happy sipping. Cheers.